Good evening, council members, staff, members of the public. Gunnar Sequist on behalf of Bickerstaff, Heath, Delgado, and Acosta. Good to see all of you again. We are here tonight for what could be our final redistricting meeting. We are presenting to you this evening some plans for final adoption, for consideration, and I believe there will again be a public hearing at the council meeting this evening where the public can come and give their input on these plans as well. For this meeting, I just thought I would walk through the plans that we have and tell you a little bit about the three and some of the differences and answer any questions that you might have as it relates to the plans. So we have three plans for consideration tonight. The first is the proposed illustrative plan that came out of our drawing session here some months ago. This is the plan that all of you had a say and got to get up and kind of move the lines around and get to where it was at a place that the council felt comfortable with, at least as a starting point for the discussion. Before the meeting the very last council meeting, we received a plan from Mr. Brown with the NAACP. We've labeled that the NAACP plan. And then since that time, we've had one other citizen plan submitted, which we will show you folks tonight as well. So this is the one that will look the most familiar. This is the illustrative plan. I'll make a quick note. There has been some suggestion, even as it relates to this plan, about renumbering. When we get to the end, I've got an example of a renumbering that I can show you as well. So in addition to selecting a plan this evening, the council will also have the opportunity to revise numbering if it feels it wishes to do so. So this is the illustrative plan. It's in your packet. Along with this, the demographic information is in the packet as well. Obviously here, we looked at total deviation, and the deviation of the plan is within acceptable limits. And as a general matter, all of the demographic numbers are within acceptable limits as well. This is the NAACP plan. You got a chance to view this for a little while at the last meeting. The main change between the illustrative plan and the NAACP plan takes place down at District 5 and 6, as it's labeled on this map. And in this area in particular, and here is the particular change. So in this plan, the boundary for District 6 becomes Pioneer, and everything in the shaded area goes into District 5. And the illustrative plan that the council drew, that area remains in District 6. The demographic changes from the NAACP plan are minor. There's some very slight shift in the overall demographic variation, about another point of overall total deviation. A couple of the individual demographic numbers changed, but very slightly. It's a couple of hundredths of a percent or a couple of tenths of a percent. So no major demographic shifts here. It's basically just a question of whether to make that that boundary line Pioneer or not, as the illustrative plan has it. This is the citizens plan, and this is the first time I believe the council's had an opportunity to see this, although it is in your materials. Here, the change in the plan from the illustrative plan actually takes place between Districts 1 and 3 up at the intersection of 635 and Interstate 30 in the north. And we look at this area, you'll see this red crossed area in the illustrative plan that the council drew remained in District 3. The major change in this citizen suggested plan is it moves that area into District 1 to use 635 as the boundary there. The demographic shift there, again, you get a little bit higher overall deviation, about a 0.38% increase in the overall deviation. I should say both the NAACP plan and this plan are within the 10% overall maximum deviation that we use as our guideline, so it doesn't push you over, but you have a little bit higher overall deviation. I think from the comments that were submitted with this plan, I think the idea was to try to balance out the population differences between District 1 and 3. If you look at the illustrative plan, I'll go back to it real quick. The greatest deviation occurs on the illustrative plan in districts 1 and 3, and that's from negative 3.74% in District 1 and positive 4.38% in District 3. And I think the goal of the citizen plan, from what I've seen in the comments, was to try to level that out a little bit. But when you look at it, what really happened is you essentially just switched the two. So where now you have an actual 4.57 deviation in District 1 and a negative 3.93. So whereas in the illustrative plan, District 1 is a little bit light and District 3 was a little bit heavy, now we have District 1 that's a little bit heavy and District 3 that's a little bit light. It changes some of the demographic numbers a little bit just because the effect of this plan is essentially to put more population into District 1. That has a little bit, it decreases some of the numbers a little bit, but not in any statistically significant way. Again, very small changes to overall demographics. It's really just a change of including this area here with District 1 as opposed to District 3. And you all will have to help me out, but I think when we talked about that area in particular, there were some apartment complexes there. So you're talking about a fairly population-heavy area, which is why you see the shift that you see with this plan. And so those are the three plans for consideration tonight. This is, as I mentioned, this is a proposed renumbering. Some of the comments that we heard in some of the public hearings were, why don't your numbers go across? And that was just the way that we had numbered them initially. There was no particular rhyme or reason behind that. So if you wanted to, in the first maps that I showed you, it went 1, 3, 2, 4, 5, 6. And if we wanted to, we can renumber it to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Some folks found that to be.
We're all thinking 1 would be the far north purple. In other words, you start the farthest northern part of the city as 1, and then 2 could be the one on the left, and then the orange would be 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, so just
Does that kind of grasp what everybody was thinking about?
Yes, sir.
We can do that too if the council makes that decision and includes that as part of their motion tonight. What we'll do is we'll renumber them and put those exhibits in behind the ordinance adopting the plan.
So I do have another question. It's about not this particular, but the process going forward. So we have a census that will occur throughout 2020. And when is it typical to receive the results of the decade decennial census?
In 2021, we'll receive the results.
Right, and which part of 2021? I think that's important.
I'm not exactly sure when that information comes out. I believe it's in the earlier part of the year, around springtime, typically.
And the reason I'm asking is because our charter requires, upon receipt of the results of the decennial census, that we redistrict based upon that. Obviously, to capture this, if there's any growth in the city in any of the districts or all of them, to redistrict to stay underneath a 10% deviation, correct?
Sure. And you have to look at your overall demographics, too, and see if that merits any other changes as well. Yes.
Right. So I guess what I'm getting at is it likely that the November 2019 election is going to be the only election that whatever map we approve will be the one that we do, and that whoever's running in 2021 will be running under a different map in 2021.
That is certainly a possibility.
I mean, likelihood?
If you don't mind, that's something the councils at that time will really get into the decision basis. I don't mean I'm not trying to, eliminate what you're talking about, but what I've done in the past when I've served and we've looked at this, we've gone through this similar process, but the council then would try to determine whether or not we needed to, for example, versus whether we can leave it the same versus significant changes.
Aren't we required to redistrict based on the decennial? I mean, we can't say, we're fine. I mean, we actually have to go through the process, and even if we redistrict exactly the same, we at least have to go through the process and examine it.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking
Right.
more, your question had to do with, are we going to be redoing all of them? My answer is, I don't think anybody knows.
Well, we don't know how much we would do, if any, but we have to examine it, and it's likely that we'll re-examine it and maybe make changes before the next election. And the reason I bring this up is there's been some discussion that maybe we should capture some of the anticipated future growth in the next decade, especially in District 6. So I think it's important to understand that it's very possible that this is the only election that we may be doing under this specific map, and that if we have any significant growth, particularly in 6, but it could be anywhere, we have significant infill projects as well, that we will very likely have in front of us, hey, this growth has done X, you need to adjust the maps to capture and react to that growth.
I think that's right. Certainly in the 2021 census, the city will undertake the process of conducting that analysis. How much things will have to change, if at all, will just depend on what the numbers show.
Gunnar, or Cliff, I'm not sure who, will the resident that drew the third map be available this evening?
I assume he would be.
During the public hearing, similar to last week or last meeting?
I did not interact with the citizen on this, so I'll have to confer, but we will try to get in contact if he's not here already. I don't see him in the audience.
Thanks.
Do we have any other comments or questions? Because I know we have an ordinance that we don't have to vote on tonight, but if we were to come to consensus, we could. And is there anything else you'd share? I'm not trying to put you on the spot about how, well, my thinking is whatever's adopted now may or may not change, and I'm looking at it as...
I recall the charter reform, we were just looking at it, saying if it's available 120 days before the election. So if that data is available at least 120 days before the next election.
Right. Well, I'm saying I'm absolutely saying we would. I just don't know how much building will be going on and trying to forecast 2 years from now what the census...
But I think anything now, in my opinion, would just be projection without that information being available. So
I was just trying to, so I'm giving Councilman Miklos kind of...
No, I actually agree with that. That's the whole point of it, is that we need to draw the maps now based upon what we have now, and that the idea that we would increase the deviation on the potential catch of future growth, the reason it's important is I think some people in the public were thinking we're going to have these maps for 12 years or 15 years, and that we better make sure we capture it, and that's not the case. It's very likely that we will make either wholesale changes or very minor technical adjustments to capture growth, especially in 6, but could be anywhere in 2 years, and also any possible change in the populations in these districts as well, to try and capture and not change anything. So that was the whole point. No, I understand.
This conversation is kind of
Yes,
like you
sir.
said. By the third time you said it, I finally got what your point. Thank you for clearing. It helps me to hear that, Mayor Pro Tem, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem.
Just to throw a little wrench in this thing, I'll just let you know that I've had several citizens contact me and ask, how do we go about getting rid of this? So we may be in a couple of years going through a whole new process of possibly going back. So, that's, just to throw it out that this very could.
You guys are making Gunner's day.
That's right.
I mean, he knows he's going to be back in 2021 anyway.
Now, you can only change the charter every 2 years, though. So.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Gunner's name to the partnership up there.
But I do get what you're sharing there about number 6, because in a couple of years and then further on down, it's all going to look different down that 20. So yeah, definitely, it's going to have to reconsider.
Are we at a position? Anything else for Gunner? Just before I ask some questions of the council. Okay, thank you, Gunner. Are we at a position tonight to discuss these maps and possibly come to consensus, or I'm not asking right now if you to give me about, or you think we're all right on, because I want to lead this to the point of saying if we can come to a consensus with one of these maps tonight, then we'll move on. And I'm not saying we have to, but I'm trying to get a feel for if we think we might be close to doing that. Okay. I think we probably will.
Well, I guess if we're trying to figure out if we're coming to a consensus, it'd probably be a good idea to discuss where everybody feels they are on each of the maps.
I'll start. I'm good with what we've done in the beginning.
So the illustrative map?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know if anybody cares to share with other weight. I don't care.
I'd like to hear from the citizen why they chose to change that. If all we're doing is flip-flopping, the numbers, and we're really not evening it out anymore, we're just flip-flopping numbers from one district to another, I would stay with the first one. But, I'd like to see why they made that adjustment.
Okay. The reason I bring that up, too, is we'll have to work through this during item 15, and if somebody, I'm giving you guys the mindset of thinking through what you may want to be doing when we get to the second part. So, any other comments?
I share similar concerns with Tandy. I'd like to hear about the third map, and I think there's a strong probability I'd be ready to move forward.
Okay.
And I feel the same as well. I'm ready to listen about this other map, but I'm leaning towards that first one as well. Just ready,
Okay. Start.
Pretty much ditto for what everybody else has said.
Thank you. Thank you for that, gentlemen. I just wanted to kind of get a feel for where we were.
Mayor, I just want to remind council we are prepared with exhibits for all three maps tonight if you so choose to move forward with adoption.
Good. Great. Glad to hear that.